So in the last video, we built our P4000 cluster, the HP P4000 VSA store virtual. Right now we're going to go through and we're going to configure, we're going to set up the iSCSI volumes to be used in our ESX hosts. So for right now, we're going to launch, we've got the CMC launched. We are looking at what we set up last time. One change we made from last time, and this is our virtual IP address. We did a .50 last time. I had a conflict with another iSCSI storage I had connected into the lab, so I've changed it to .60. So the virtual IP in this video is 192.168.202.60 for the cluster. So anyway, let's walk through and build our volumes. We do have only 2 nodes, so when we get into the volume creation, we don't have the options of creating network grade 5 or anything like that, so we can do that at a later time. So anyway, let's get started. So for right now, as we looked at before, we have available to us about 94 gig of usable space. We have 50 gigs provisioned from each VSA currently. Obviously this is for the lab, so we don't need a whole lot of storage. So anyway, so if you go down to volumes here in snapshots and right click and say new volume, we're going to create a volume and we're going to call this P4000, let's call it ESX data store 1. And we'll give it a name of SCSI volume 1, and we're going to create this volume as, let's say, 30 gig. This section here is where we're going to add the assigned servers. We haven't done that yet, so we'll do that in a few minutes. So let's go to advanced. This is where we get into, we can do different network grade levels and set our type to primary or remote copies. We're doing primary. Provisioning we're going to do is thin. We don't want to automatically allocate that 30 gigs out of our 90 gigs. So we'll do thin provisioning. With only having 2 nodes, we only have the option of RAID 0 and RAID 10. If we had additional nodes, we'd have RAID 5, network grade 5 available to us. So right now we're just going to do network grade 10, as well as if we had 4 nodes, we would be able to do additional network grade 10 configurations. So let's do that. Again, this is thin provision, network grade 10, 30 gig volume, our name and our description. We're going to hit OK, and the volume is created. So now we see our volume here, and we're doing thin provisioning, so it's only consumed 1 gig. Now we need to allocate our servers that we're going to be using. So we go over to our VI client, we're going to go to storage adapters, and this is where we're going to get our iSCSI initiator name. And we're going to right click, copy, highlight that, copy it, and this is our first node. So we go back in here and we say new server and give it a name. We're going to call it ESX 01. And scroll down to initiator name, copy and paste that IQN number, and enable load balancing. We're not going to do any CHAP authentication, anything like that for this demo. The controlling server IP address, this is where, if you look at this, you can enter the vCenter IP. We're not going to set that up right now, so keep that in mind as well. So we hit OK. There's our first server. Go over here, go to our next VMware host, do the same thing, highlight and copy, and new server. Whoops. Call this ESX02. Initiator name, copy and paste, hit OK. Now we have our two ESX hosts allocated in here. So now we can go into volume, and we're going to edit assign servers, and we're going to select both because we want both hosts access to that volume, and we want that permission read write, obviously. So say OK. That message just made sure that you realize that you're assigning a volume to multiple systems that may or may not be able to lock the disks and such like that, be able to allow both hosts to write and read from that volume at the same time. Obviously we're doing this ESX, so this is a non-issue. So again, our virtual IP in this cluster is 192.168.202.60. So now we're going to go over to our VI client, and we're going to go to properties on iSCSI software adapter, and we're going to go to the dynamic discovery. This is the other IP that we used in the last video. This is going to a FreeNAS iSCSI setup that I have going as well. So now we're going to add our iSCSI server is 192.168.202.60, and we say OK and close, rescan. Now you see we have a left-hand iSCSI disk of 30 gigs. Do the same thing for our second node. Go to properties, dynamic discovery, and 192.168.202.60, and hit OK. Close. Let it rescan. We now see the left-hand iSCSI disk again 30 gigs. So now we can go to our storage. We can say add storage, disk LUN, and we're going to select the left-hand iSCSI, and we're going to do VMFS5, and next give it a name. We'll call it P4000 Data Store 1, maximum available space, and finish. Now it's going to create that volume as a data store in ESX. And there we go. So now we have access into that, and it's formatted and ready for use. We go over here, and this guy will eventually pop in here. Let's hit refresh. We'll get it to force it through. Anyway, if this takes a long time, it should come back. There it is. I was going to say you can also hit rescan all and it'll rescan, but it does auto-populate back into the other node because they both have access into that volume. So in our lab, we actually have distributed switches set up for multiple iSCSI connections. So we can do MPIO. If you look at these, you can go to Edit Settings, Teaming and Failover. We have them set up as so each port group only has one active uplink. This is in order to configure the iSCSI adapter to use for us to pin that connection for MPIO. Again, if you look at settings on this other port group, same thing. It's just the opposite. DV uplink 2. The other one was DV uplink 1. And you can see that if you go into storage adapters again, go to properties on the iSCSI network configurations, you can see our VM kernel 1 and VM kernel 2 are bound to the iSCSI adapter, so we can do MPIO. So basically all we have to do is go into storage, go to that volume, go to properties, manage paths, and the default is always fixed VMware unless you do command line and tell it to enable round robin for all new volumes. So anyway, we're going to do change. Now we have 2 active I/O paths, and we have to do that for the other node as well. Manage paths, change it to round robin, and now we have 2 active I/O paths into that volume as well from the other host. So that's really it. That's all we do to be able to start using that storage off the VSA. Like I say, this is a small volume set, so just for this demo. The other thing that you will want to do, that I will do in another video, is in a 2-node cluster we'll want to set up a failover manager. It's called a FOM that we'll want to set up to control that cluster. That way if you lose a node, you don't get a no quorum found error, which I've actually experienced, and it's not fun. But if you ever do get in that position where you didn't have a FOM enabled, which it's just another virtual appliance that runs, and you basically add it in here, and like I say, I'll do this in another video. But if you were to get in a bind and you only had a 2-node cluster set up and you didn't have your FOM enabled, one of your nodes was to go offline, your volumes would be inaccessible, and you would have errors in here saying basically no quorum. And what you would do is you can go into this virtual manager and you can tell it to start a virtual manager. And if I was to do this right now, it would ask which host I want to enable that virtual manager on. Right now I have 2 available. If you were in a bind where 1 node was only available, you would obviously be starting it on it. And that's just a temporary thing, so obviously you will want to enable a FOM at a later time very quickly once that other node comes back online, because you cannot do it once you start the virtual manager. You can only stop the virtual manager once the the 2 nodes come back into the cluster. Like I say, I'll do a demo of that, what that looks like, at another time. So for right now, like I say, I just wanted to show you how to go in and set up the VSA to build a volume, provision it to your ESX host, and add it into your ESX host and enable MPIO and have it available in use. So at this time, I'm going to end for right now. You can check out the other video, which is the initial setup of the VSA. Again, I'll be doing more videos very soon on additional things we can do with this.